And there's a rifle sight of where they lay in a depressed, with a little bit of berm in front of them in a depressed campground in their tent where they can lay right in their tent undetected. And they had an SKS. They had another bolt rifle, I believe. They had a shotgun, a handgun, I believe, as well. And lean over and he goes, there's no way a team that isn't really trained and seen a lot of this would not got shot up, at least, because both trails would have led to them wanting to clear into this canopy. And you don't even see the tents until you get into the point, till you get through the shade of the redwood forest. In Asphalt Alley that I talked about, in those Santa Cruz mountains, we didn't see the little 22s. It was 12 gauge shotguns camouflaged. It was AK-47 derivatives and SKSs. It was like Mauser military bolt action guns. It was like, the shiny nickel, almost cartel cliche you'd see in Narcos, 45 ACP, like a Cartels 45 pistol. It was stuff like that. So we started to see more, and then ARs, the M4 derivatives and things like that, we'd start to see in grows. And it just depended on what group you were working and how aggressive they were and what their mindset was. And it was a little bit different in all of them. I mean, clearly everyone was a deadly force threat because, 9 times out of 10, if we surprise them and they've got that gun, they're going to go for it. And 9 times out of 10, hopefully we're not going to have a gunfight because we have a dog and we've got cover and things like that. And in the situations where we don't have to shoot and we have no choice, that's where things escalate. But yeah, that whole area, ironically, and that wasn't Northern California, Shasta County, Siskiyou, all that area, a lot of guns, a lot of aggressive, more assault type weapons. And then ironically, right above the Silicon Valley and that stretch of Santa Cruz Mountains was nothing but heavy stuff and bleeding over into Santa Cruz County as just some examples.
God, that's crazy. Because I would imagine, and there's obviously not tons of ways to verify this, but I would imagine, you were talking about the pipeline that gets created, right? So they start in Mexico in the valleys of Michoacan or anything like that. They're growing in Sinaloa and then, they become the guy that gets sent up north. I'm imagining once they start getting hit and they're like, hey, we're getting hit pretty hard here. They're probably picking some of their top sicarios as well and tossing them up north as well. People that are more militarized, have a better understanding of tactics. Like the idea that, they were creating sniper hides and overwatching, likely areas where you guys would be patrolling or reconning or whatever. I mean, that just showcases they're no longer, that shift from growers to a militarized force, and the way that they're approaching you guys addressing them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that last gunfight I talked about, Sierra Azul, just over the mountain from the same area where my partner was shot in 2005 that we did in 2017 mission. I was with my team when our canine handler had to engage, and Marcos and myself and Rumble and another warden dealt with that. So once the scene was contained, we of course are gone because now we're going to go do our debrief. We're going to get interviewed because of a shooting investigation. But my assistant team leader, who later became the team leader met behind me, Shang, his call sign in the book, he basically secured that grow site for the rest of the day with the rest of our team. Not only, overseeing the eradication, but clearing the rest of the grow we had not gotten into yet because it was a kitchen lower on the mountain we were working our way up to when this guy came down on us with a weapon out. And what was interesting is I got a call a little bit later while I'm sitting in like a waiting room to be interviewed at the district attorney's office, just going and just taking calls, I'm talking to the chief and talking to the assistant chief and debriefing things because I can at least talk on my cell phone, but I can't be out there. And that's always frustrating, but it's just the way it has to go. And Shane just goes, dude, we are so lucky that we had that engagement down there because up here, when you get to the bottom of the big grow site at the top of the mountain, you work through the grow site and their encampment is in massive, super thick redwood trees that afford like a shade cave all hours of the day. And they have like a rifle sight, and he's sending me photos. And there's a rifle sight of where they lay in a depressed, with a little bit of berm in front of them in a depressed campground in their tent where they can lay right in their tent undetected. And they had an SKS. They had another bolt rifle, I believe. They had a shotgun, a handgun, I believe, as well. And lean over and he goes, there's no way a team that isn't really trained and seen a lot of this would not got shot up, at least, because both trails would have led to them wanting to clear into this
Perfect
canopy. And you don't even see the tents until you get into the point, till you get through the shade of the redwood forest, where you're now going to have to clear tents. And tents present a really weird problem because you kind of got to clear them like a building, but they have soft walls.
Just go right through.
Yeah. And you got to cut into them. You got to do, there's a lot of different tactics that I won't dive into, but so it was crazy. And there were all the guns. Now those guys had bugged out when their partner below, when it was going bang, bang down below. Fortunately, they left and they had 2 great escape routes behind that particular hide. But from a tactical preparedness standpoint, I was having flashbacks to when Mojo was ambushed behind that parapet, like I talk about in both books. And I'm like, here it is, here it is. Yeah, these guys know what they're doing. And they were prepared that if someone had been sneaking up in the morning and we had not already had a conflict, we were going to have a gunfight 20 minutes later than when the gunfight happened that day. And it would have been a lot worse because of the guns that were there. I like to think, knowing the site, looking at the site after the fact, looking at all the pictures, something I do for law enforcement teams especially is 4 of our 6 officer involved shootings. I have PowerPoint debriefs, the diagrams, the play-by-play, trail indicators, what happened, what the transpiration was, what we learned, how it went, trauma response, all aspects. And that's the last one that I debrief. And I really, really analyzed that one because it went so smoothly for us tactically. And it was probably tied for the top 10 most dangerous grows we'd ever entered, if not the most dangerous grow, at least while I was running the team. And I know they had a lot of heavy grows after. But yeah, it was an eye-opener, man, seeing that. And I'm like, okay, no one can tell me these guys aren't organized, prepared, and have some SOPs and are prepared. They're not randomly doing it. They're not like, oh, you're a good grower, take this 22 pistol and go guard the grow, but you better fight because
we'll be upset.
Because we'll be real upset or we're taking you out. That's not who these guys were. That place was, that was a big boys learning curve club up there in those mountains for sure.
Yeah, they're operating directly. It's like a military asset. And that's actually, that carries into what I wanted to ask with this is that, so obviously they're learning a lot of these tactics and everything with what's going on in Mexico, because in Mexico, they essentially can do whatever they want. It's a testing ground. They get to play around. They have grows there that are outrageous. We were talking about Narcos, the one infamous one that's miles long, and they have that, Is there any communication or understanding or like like Ed Calderon, he was on that Tijuana team. Like, is there communication on how Mexico is approaching this and we're looking to approach this, and either us giving advice on tactics or what some of these new approaches the cartels are taking, getting shuffled up to us? Because that feels like that would be such a necessary communication pipeline, because the shit they're bringing up north, they're testing and learning down south, Yeah.
That's a very good question. We did that in the 90s. Our special forces groups from Army SF, went to train Mexican militia police forces. It became the Los Zetas cartel. They branched off. Right. Ed talked about it. A lot of guys have talked about it because I think at that time, Ed was probably dealing with those guys when they turned corrupt, if I'm not mistaken. We're sending Marine trainers down now to help Mexican authorities fight the cartels as well. And this debate just came up, and this is part of the new war on terrorism domestically, but working with Mexico as well. Do we have any concern that if we're going to send our SF guys down from a training advisory role only, that we're not going to create that again? I think there's always that potential given the culture of Mexico and corruption.
And money talks.
And money talks. And at the end of the day, especially down there, money talks because it's so limited. And, you don't have to spend much time in Mexico to realize it's tough to live in Mexico. I've spent a ton of time in Mexico, both for work, for Baja races and everything else. Beautiful country, beautiful people, and they're under siege, as you know. I think at this point, because it's such an overt mission now for us as Americans, and we want to work with Mexico and commit real resources, I think this is the time, if it's ever going to work, It has to work now. That being said, whatever we train with down there, it would probably be a good play if their administration goes for it, for our guys to be with them when they're doing raids, just like Green Berets do all over the rest of the world when we're in conflict and actually where they're sanctioned to be. Because under the terrorism rule and the definition, there should be no issue with that. Not, hey, we trained you, we gave you all the good equipment.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck, and go be a $1 million Sicario, 2 weeks after I leave. No, go in, immerse with them, see that pride, test that out if we're going to do that. I know we want to avoid as much direct action ourselves as we need to, but I liken it to 3rd and 7th group being right with me on a grow site in Asshole Alley, that same place I'm talking about, not the gunfight mission, but the one the year before that where we arrested 8 different suspects. We were having to borrow handcuffs to pull up from our military guys because there were so many bad guys and so many different mini grows and so many weapons, but nobody fired a shot. But I was literally shoulder to shoulder with 7th SF guys that are brothers now for life. And they were there sanctioned, and there was not a declaration of war on terrorism. That's just they can't directly engage. They were there under National Guard, reserve status, basically, counter drug. So they were there. They just cannot engage missions themselves. This changes. There's no reason why what we were doing with them then can't continue, and it's already continuing on the border. And I'm sure of these 6,000 military operators, whatever branch they're from, that they're immersed right with, Texas National Guard, right with Texas State Troopers, right with the game wardens, and we're all doing the same mission together. And that's a beautiful thing when you need guys that really know what they're doing and gals that really know what they're doing. So yeah, you're going to see that tactical problem continue to develop and push its way up north, and we need to shut it down as much as we can down there and fight it here because there's no shortage of them. I can only guess what we're into the hundreds of thousands of operatives throughout America.